Good morning, everybody. Mr. Sudhamulal, Director General of the MRA, Mr. Ramlal, Solicitor General, Mr. Parmesar, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Financial Services and Good Governance, Mr. Munisomi from the DBP's office, distinguished guests and invitees, members from the NGO, civil society, private sector, all protocol observed, welcome, and thank you for your presence. So it's an honor for me to be addressing you today, and I want to thank Mr. Sudhamulal, whom I have not met for some time, partly because of COVID, but also because of all the burden and the challenges faced during the preparation to get Mauritius out of the FATF list, although we did meet. But I think it's good to renew the relationship. And as he has mentioned himself, it's important to understand that collaboration and cooperation and coordination is important in the work. And this is in fact going to be one of the focus of my address in the light of what's going to come up in the next 2 to 3 years. So thank you again, Mr. Lal, and for all his officers for inviting me today. And I see this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Lal as well on this new facility, the Integrated Customs Clearance Center, which is a far-sighted development in trying to adopt a holistic approach in handling clearance at the customs level. So congratulations, and especially for the building, and I hope we'll be able to make use of this conference center in the future for more events. I mean, this is what coordination and collaboration is all about, isn't it? To try and share not only knowledge, expertise, but facilities that are at our disposal whenever the need arises. So speaking about compliance, I think we have 3 phases that we need to look at. And it's true, as has been mentioned, that we went through a phase when we had to put our heads together to get Mauritius out of the list. This is the past. We also need to look at what happened after the present, and then what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years when we're going to be evaluated again in 2025. And that's not far away. So my presentation or intervention is going to focus on what did we do, what have we done, what are we going to do. So the context is important because there are 3 aspects that is really important to keep in mind in trying to speak about compliance. And let's not forget the background that Mauritius is seeking to become a very strong international financial center. And when we speak about international financial center, compliance with the existing regulatory obligation and framework, global, is important, of which AML CFT is probably one of the most important. So first, as context, when we exited the FATF ICRG list, the FATF, through the Africa Middle East Joint Group, which had the responsibility to review Mauritius, left us in October 2021 with a clear message. The message was that we need to ensure sustainability and effectiveness of our system. That was not an something from the air dropping down. It was a sentence, a phrase full of meaning, because that is what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to be called upon to show that we have been able to sustain and improve on all the efforts that we had adopted since 2018 until 2021, and that we have, through those sustained efforts, rendered our system more effective. So this was the message that the FATF left us with in 2021, October. Second, in 2025, 2 to 3 years down the line, we are going to be evaluated again. And this time, the setting might be different because there are changes that are taking place at the global level in terms of AML CFT obligation at the level of the FATF, and we will need to prepare ourselves to meet the next set of challenges. That's second. So keep in mind that whatever is happening today, and thank you to the MRA to keep this momentum moving forward, this is going to be part of a bigger picture of preparing Mauritius to show that it has sustained its system and it is more effective. Third, so what are we going to be called upon to do from now on, or from 2021 to 2025? So these are three factors that we have to keep in mind as context. So on the first, excuse me, what's going to happen from the perspective of the FATF is important for us to keep in mind. What has happened recently at the level of the FATF, insofar as AML CFT obligation is concerned, is that they have a new strategic vision paper which they have adopted and which is being implemented. There are two aspects that are critical in this paper, and this has to be able to guide us through our preparation for the next few years. First, the FATF in its strategic vision paper is putting a lot of focus on the region, its relationship with the regional, what is called FSRBs, the FATF-style regional bodies, right? So the reason being that the FATF has realized that it is important to understand in a very integrated manner and holistic, for that matter, what is happening at the regional level. And it came to the conclusion on the basis that, following the work that it does throughout the world, there are certain issues that need to be addressed at the level of the region. That's one. Which means that as part of the SAMLAG regional body, we're going to be called upon to do certain things. Second, the FATF in its next round of evaluation is likely to focus a lot on risk or the criteria to evaluate countries. And Mauritius, seeking to become an international or a very advanced and developed international financial center, is going to be looked at in that particular perspective. So, question is an IFC a high risk, a middle risk, or a lower risk territory? So these are the two things that we have to keep in mind in order to understand what has happened at the global level and what is going to happen next, in order to try and assist us in preparing ourselves for 2025. So, next, past, present, future. We are not going to go into what happened between 2018 and 2021. We all know what happened. On 26th of December 2020, I was called upon to take the lead on the preparation to get Mauritius out of the list, because in November 2020, we found ourselves in a very tricky and challenging situation where we had to adopt a hardline approach, not that I'm hard, to try and make sure that we are ready to get Mauritius out of the list. Because in November 2020, without going into too much detail, we were at a situation where we had been downgraded. Right? So on 26th December, which was a Saturday, the chair of the core group called me and one or two other colleagues to try and look at what the situation was and how and what is it that we needed to do. That's when we set up the subcommittee of the core group, which I led until October 2021, and we managed to put our heads together and overcome the challenges that existed to try and get Mauritius out of the list, which we did 6 months ahead of time. So, we are not going to go into the past. The only thing that we need to know about the past is what are the lessons that we have learned through that phase that are going to assist us and inform our decision and preparation for 2025. So, one, we have put in place all the structures that are important and necessary to carry out the work. We have the Ministerial Committee chaired by the Prime Minister. We have the core group chaired by the Financial Secretary. We have the National Committee chaired by the PS of the Ministry. We have other subcommittees. We have the ACT from the DPP, chaired by the DPP. We have the ICC, the Interagency Coordinating Committee, chaired by the Governor of Mauritius, of the Central Bank of Mauritius, which looks at the supervisory framework. So all these mechanisms have been put in place, and all the subcommittees that are working and continue to work on the different IUs. So we have the structures in place. We also have law enforcement mechanism to ensure coordination and collaboration. Not necessarily at the national level, but at bilateral level as well. For example, we have an MOU with the MRA, which have been updated with other agencies as well to try and ensure that we have closer collaboration at the bilateral level. We have been able to get the resources with the help of the Ministry of Finance, the Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Financial Services and Good Governance. So nobody can come and complain now that we don't have stuff, we don't have money, we don't have computers, and we don't have training. And the third thing is that we have been able to build capacity and competencies and expertise. This is an example of a continued, a sustained effort to try and build competencies. And we have signed MOUs at bilateral level. We try and ensure continuous monitoring, and we have built a very nice and strong relationship with the different regional and international players. Becoming a member of the OECD Working Group on Bribery in December, more precisely on the 7th of December 2022, is part of the whole thing. Right? So this is what we have done and what we can take out as, or take away as lesson from those few years in the past. But there have been a lot of challenges, and those challenges continue up till today. I'm going to come to that in a minute. So, what happened? The outcome, we exited the list. We had also been able not only to get out of the list and by addressing the significant or substantive deficiencies, but we also managed together to try and address the technical compliance issues and ensured that Mauritius became one of the 6 or 8 countries in the world and the first in Africa to get 40 out of 40 recommendation compliant. So that's not a small feat, right? We might not see it. It's part of a collaborative effort. We would tend to think that we exist individually, sectorally, institutionally. At the end of the day, this does not count. The national perspective is what counts. Because it's a country thing at the end of the day. And we need to be able to continue to put our heads together and forget our small and petty differences and try and make sure that we understand what the bigger picture and the expectation is. So we manage on effectiveness to score, and we manage on technical compliance to score big. And we are the first African country to have done that. And I think 8 in the world, if I'm not mistaken. So we have the structures in place. What is happening and what has happened since 2021, October? We continued to work. The structures continued to work. But the synergy and the momentum that existed from 2018 to 2021 started, losing some steam, right? For obvious reason. There was a definite target and objective, which pulled everything and everybody together, even the public in the marketplace was asking, when are we going to get out of the list? And it became a national issue. And people talked about it. When are we going to get out of that list? And we managed to do that. But we lost part of that steam, and that's inevitable. But now it's up to us to come and try and re-energize that synergy in order to start preparing for the next round. What has happened? We have developed a new national strategy at the level of the core group. I have the papers with me. It's not been circulated yet, and it's being discussed at the level of the core group. We have a plan of action. I'm going to give you some details of it that is annexed to the new strategy to move forward. We are completing the national risk assessment. The national committee is active, the core group is active and is trying to become more active. We have a progress report that we have developed from on what we have achieved from October 2021 up till now, and you won't believe it. Many countries have come to us to ask for our support and guidance as to how we manage to get out of the list. We have Jordan, we have worked with them, we have Democratic Republic of Congo, South Africa just got on the list and has asked us to try and share some of our experiences, and we managed to get a project adopted at the level of the ISAMLAC to build a methodology and a toolkit on how to share experiences from Mauritius, Botswana and Zimbabwe. Mauritius is in the lead, and with other countries that happen to find themselves or are going to be on the ICAC list soon. So this is like part of the whole regional, global development and achievement that have taken place. And we have acquired so much experience that people are now very interested to learn from Mauritius. And I mean, everybody who is here, Mr. Ramlal, Mr. Manisomi, Mr. Parmesan, Mr. Lal, we all know that many countries are coming to us to try and learn from our experiences. And this should be a source of pride. It should be a source of incentive to try and get us to understand that we have achieved quite a lot and we need to be able to keep that momentum. So the strategy paper is guided but by what I have stated earlier, what is happening at the level of the FATF in its strategy paper. The title is The Future of the FATF Global Network, Strategic Vision and the Reference. And we have developed as part of the strategy paper a few short, medium and longer term objectives. And this might be new to you. One of the objectives is to play a more active role in the ISAMLAC, a more active role in the FATF, and who knows, perhaps eventually try and become a member of the FATF. I mean, let's look at what's happening globally. We've got out of the list. And look at the pull effect. We've got out of the list. We're playing an active role in ISAMLAC. We have been invited to become a member, a participant member of the OECD Working Group on Bribery. We are the second only African country on that group, South Africa being number one. It's not a small thing. We have been invited to participate in the G20 Working Group on Corruption. And you can see a picture emerging at the international level. And it is all as a result of the work that is being done. And I'm not talking about development of the economy, financial services. I'm talking about our small, objective or responsibility in trying to ensure compliance with the AML CFT regulatory framework. So all of it is to try and ensure sustainability and effectiveness. So the plan of action. We will need to look at the legislation and review. Over the years, the FIAMLA has gone through a series of amendments. We are now in a position to sit back and look at whether we need a consolidated legislation for different reasons. This is in the thinking. finalize a review of the national risk assessment, which is going to be critical for the next round, update the national AML CFT strategy paper, building more effective cooperation, reinforcing the structure that exists, building capacity, continue to build capacity. So there's a list of objectives that we have defined with specific line of action in the plan of action as to how we're going to achieve those objectives. These are being discussed at the level of the core group and the National Coordinating Committee to try and gather momentum in consensus around those issues. Now, finally, the MRA. Mr. Lal has already spoken about it quite sufficiently. The law enforcement, the MRA, one big component in the AML CFT space is tax evasion, how it relates to AML CFT, and how this provides an opportunity for us to work together, because the MRA is specialist and expert in that particular field, and we have developed knowledge and expertise in our field, so there's no reason why we should not be able, for example, to look at the Franklin case and talk to the MRA and see whether there's a need to look into, tax evasion. That's an example that is more topical. I know everybody is reading about it and probably expect me to talk about it, but that's for later. That's one. Second, with the MRA is cash courier, and Mr. Lal has spoken about it, putting in place an electronic system to monitor cash courier, and this is one of the main responsibilities of the MRA, to try and monitor and track down, people who are bringing in cash just suspicious of money laundering and terrorism finance. In that particular context, it's important for us to understand that sharing of information is important. Effective coordination and collaboration is critical. And we can only do that if we sit down together and think holistically as to how we can improve the system at one end and the other end. And it's not like, go it alone thing. You cannot do it. We need to work for our institution. We need to build our institution. That's logical. That's inevitable. But we also need to understand that we need to build our institution in a manner that it helps build the country's perspective and objective. At the end of the day, this is what this is all about. Now, when we are going to meet the SAMLAG in 2 to 3 years' time, and 2 to 3 years' time is, we come out in October 2021, we are already in March 2023. So time is like this, and we need to be able to sit down, strengthen, like is being done with an integrated system. This is all part of the whole thing. And this is the only way we will be able to try and build stronger, more effective system. There are going to be challenges. There is still challenges. Sharing of information is one. And let's not make, any mistake. Let's not have any illusion about it. This is institution building. When I came back from the US in 2016, Mr. Lal knows about it, Hajis knows about it, I set up in 2017 a coordinating committee of all heads of law enforcement and supervisory and regulatory bodies. I have the pictures on the newspapers. I have collected them. My intention is to build that synergy again. I did it with the help of my colleagues together to try and get Mauritius out of the list in June 2021, but the process required that it was in October at the plenary that it had to be officialized. But we actually got out in June 2021. That's when we had this joint group visit, which came to that particular conclusion, but had to refer it to the plenary for endorsement. So sharing of information is important. But for me, the experience that we have lived, and I speak under your correction, excuse me, for me, the biggest challenge is coordination. We need to be able to sit down and think seriously about how we're going to coordinate. It's not a question of not developing your institution, your structure, but it's more important to be able to get together and look at the whole thing, not from a sectoral or an institutional approach, but from a holistic national perspective. I repeat this all the time, and I'm going to say it again. In 2012, the FATF changed its methodology and its recommendation. It used to operate, and it had operated for 20 years on the basis of a set of recommendations of 40 plus 9. I'm sure you know about it. 40 money laundering, 9 terrorism finance. In 2012, and the work of the IMF is to go to countries, do evaluation, do training, capacity building, and so on. And I was part of it. And in 2012, based on that experience, it came to the conclusion that it had to reverse the system. And it changed its recommendation, combined both, and came up with 40. And then the methodology changed. Now, what happened in the 40 recommendation? The first 2 recommendations are critical. It was the first time that the FATF adopted risk-based as one of the pillars of its system, recommendation 1. This is what gave rise to the national risk assessment. And that's not out of the blue. It's after a long time of looking at the experience from country and thinking. Second, the second recommendation in the FATF recommendation is on domestic and international cooperation. And that recommendation used to be 36, if I'm not mistaken, in the previous system. And to move a recommendation from 36 to number 2 is not something just coincidence. There is this thinking that having worked in many countries for 20 years, it came to the conclusion that one of the biggest challenges in countries was to coordinate. And coordination and cooperation and collaboration, if I can use the 3 C's, coordination, collaboration, and cooperation, is critical for the system to move forward. And this is not said or done with disrespect to any institutional or sectoral input. So this is all that I have to say, and I hope I've been able to share some of my experiences with you. And soon we're going to start anew to build again. And we look forward to working closely with everybody. And the good thing that we have done is we have been able to build some competencies and expertise, and we know that we need to be able to coordinate effectively. So all this together with the strategy plan, the plan of action, the progress report. I mean, look at what countries in the region are doing. They are asking us to try and guide them. South Africa is now on the list, and small Mauritius is now being looked at as an example. So let's not lose that momentum and let's not lose that message. So I want to thank Mr. Lal again and everybody from the MRA for the invitation and for their support in our work. I'm sure we will continue to work, and again, we can only move forward if we sit down and talk and clear the air. Thank you very much.